Hello and welcome to Haunted Montreal's Spooky Story Sessions. I'm your host, Holly Rhiannon, and today I'm going to tell you all about Harry Houdini's ghost. Happy almost Halloween, you spooky specimens. Today, for our 30th episode, and just because it's that time of year, we've decided to treat you to the tale of a famous ghost. And stick around to the end of the episode for a little chat with a special guest who will give you some more insight into this story. Here at Haunted Montreal, we bring you ghost stories in both French and English every Saturday. But before we get into today's episode, please remember to like, subscribe, and hit the bell button so you get notified every time we have a new tale to share. And if you're already subscribed, a massive thank you. Welcome back. We are so happy to have you here. Now, without further ado, let's get spooky. Harry Houdini, once known as the world's greatest magician, was a man of great mystery. His connection to the City of Montreal is both strong and extremely tragic. Houdini met his fate in Montreal while touring a magic show at the Princess Theatre on the afternoon of October 22nd, 1926. Following an incident with a student from McGill University in his dressing room, Houdini's health began to fail. While he attempted to continue touring, he died just over a week later in Detroit Hospital on Hallowe'en, no less. Today, rumors swirl that Harry Houdini's ghost haunts various locations throughout North America, including Montreal. Harry Houdini was born on March 24, 1874, in Budapest, Hungary. His parents, a Jewish rabbi and his wife, named him Erich Weiss. While still a child, his family moved to Appleton, Wisconsin, and he spent much of his childhood there. When he was 13, the family moved to New York City, and young Erich became interested in trapeze arts and magic. In 1894, Erich renamed himself Harry Houdini in homage to the great French magician Jean-Eugène Robert Houdin, and launched his career as a professional magician. Though his magic met with little success at first, his feats of escape using handcuffs drew plenty of attention. Like most magicians, Harry Houdini had an assistant, his being named Wilhelmina Beatrice Rahner. She fell in love with him, and they married. Her stage name was Beatrice Bess Houdini. In 1899, Houdini's act caught the attention of entertainment manager Martin Beck, who booked him at some of the best vaudeville venues in the United States. On the heels of success, a European tour followed. Houdini's feats often involved the local police force, who would strip search him, place him in shackles, and lock him in one of their jail cells. Every time he was able to escape. Harry Houdini's show became a huge sensation, and he soon became the highest paid performer on the American vaudeville circuit. Houdini continued touring his magic show in the United States in the early 1900s, constantly pushing boundaries with his feats. He escaped from handcuffs, straitjackets, locked tanks filled with water, and packing crates with nails hammered through them. Once, he even spent 91 minutes in a galvanized iron coffin that was submerged at the bottom of a hotel swimming pool. Using his uncanny strength and his equally impressive ability to pick locks, he escaped dangerous situations time and time again. His most famous act, the hallmark of his career, was unveiled in 1912, the Chinese water torture cell. The performance involved Houdini suspended by his feet being lowered upside down into a locked glass cabinet filled with water. In this aquarium-like contraption, Houdini had to hold his breath for more than 3 minutes in order to escape. The performance was considered so daring and was such a crowd pleaser that it remained a staple in his act until his death in 1926. As a great illusionist, Houdini was also involved in an impassioned debate that was unfolding at the time surrounding a practice known as spiritualism. Spiritualism is the belief that the spirits of the dead have both the ability and the inclination to communicate with the living. Believers see the afterlife, or the spirit world, as a place where spirits are active and continue to evolve. Spiritualism was popular from the 1840s to the 1920s and was considered a part of Victorian subculture. It included mediums, specialist newspapers, pamphlets, treatises, and secret societies. Private and public seances included table rapping, table tipping, automatic writing, levitation, and other types of communication with spirits. Spiritualism was especially popular in English-speaking countries and drew followers mostly from the middle and upper classes. Some of society's most influential people practiced spiritualism. Queen Victoria and Prince Albert participated in spiritualist seances as early as 1846. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, author of Sherlock Holmes, was an adherent, and even Canadian Prime Minister William Lloyd Mackenzie King communicated with spirits. Harry Houdini, despite being the world's most famous magician, was never a believer in spiritualism, although he claimed he wanted to be. When his mother died in 1913, she left an impression on Houdini with her last word, "forgive." He began to visit a number of mediums in an attempt to receive confirmation that his mother's spirit existed in the afterworld. However, the more seances that he attended, the more Houdini began to believe that all mediums were fraudulent and were taking advantage of vulnerable people. None of the mediums he visited were able to repeat his mother's last word, and for him, that was enough evidence that the movement was a hoax. Houdini decided to use his talents as an illusionist to expose the sneaky tricks used by unscrupulous mediums to take money from grieving clients. His mission to debunk such unethical quackery gained an impassioned, albeit small, following. Houdini's position caused rifts within the spiritualism movement and even ruptured friendships. His friend, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, was convinced that Houdini possessed divine powers of dematerialization, despite all of the magician's protestations to the contrary. Their relationship began to sour when Houdini began to publicly debunk mediums, both on stage and in a journal called Scientific American. Conan Doyle was devastated when Houdini exposed a Boston medium named Marjorie Crandon, an attractive blonde who was also known as the Blonde Witch of Lime Street. She would often perform naked and apparently secreted ectoplasm from her private parts. Houdini attended her show, observed her sleight of hand tricks, and then publicly exposed her as a fraud. When Houdini announced to the seance attendees that the game was rigged, Marjorie and her spirit guide Walter were furious. "Houdini, you goddamn son of a bitch," Walter yelled. "I put a curse on you now that will follow you every day for the rest of your short life." This threat didn't deter Houdini, and he took his exposé public, publishing pamphlets that described in detail exactly how Marjorie performed her tricks. Before long, Houdini didn't just have Marjorie's career in a death grip, he was strangling the entire spiritualist movement. In August 1926, Walter declared, "Houdini will be dead within a year." Sir Arthur Conan Doyle interpreted Houdini's mission to unmask mediums and debunk spiritualism as a personal betrayal. Their friendship devolved into a feud, and they made tit-for-tat comments against each other in various newspapers. In spite of the conflict, Harry Houdini would continue touring his magic shows throughout North America, enjoying the fame and fortune that comes with being the world's greatest magician. However, Walter's curse and prediction would come to fruition in October in Montreal, where an unexpected incident would put an end to the storied magician's career and life. On the afternoon of October 22nd, 1926, Houdini was relaxing in his dressing room at Montreal's Princess Theatre on St. Catherine Street before an evening performance. He was visited by two McGill students who were curious about his alleged magical powers. One student named J. Gordon Whitehead asked Houdini if it was true that he could withstand any punch to the stomach, as the magician had previously claimed. Houdini said yes. All of a sudden, the young man delivered a series of 4 punches to Houdini's gut before the magician could tighten his muscles. Taken off guard, Houdini's appendix ruptured and his health quickly began to fail. Throughout the evening, Houdini performed his show in excruciating pain. He was unable to sleep and remained in constant pain over the next 2 days as he traveled to Detroit to continue performing. When he finally sought medical help, Houdini was found to have acute appendicitis and a fever of 38 degrees. A doctor advised him to go to the hospital for immediate surgery, but Houdini decided to first complete his show as planned on October 24th at the Tony Garrick Theatre. When the curtain rose, Houdini's temperature was a feverish 40 degrees. Despite help from his assistants, he was clearly exhausted and in pain. Houdini missed several cues and seemed in a rush to complete the show. By the middle of the third act, he could not continue, so asked his assistant to lower the curtain. Houdini collapsed backstage and was carried by his assistants to his dressing room. Stubbornly, he continued to refuse medical care until the next morning, when his wife, Bess, insisted he go to the hospital. Houdini relented and was admitted to Detroit's Grace Central Hospital. Doctors quickly removed his ruptured appendix, but did not have much hope for his survival. Several days later, on October 31st, Harry Houdini was surrounded by his wife and his brother on his deathbed in room 401. Houdini promised his wife that he would send her a message from beyond the grave if it was possible. With the last words, "I'm tired of fighting," Harry Houdini died at 1:26 p.m. of septic poisoning caused by peritonitis from a ruptured appendix, making for an extremely macabre Halloween. Houdini's funeral was held on November 4th, 1926 in Queens, New York at the Machpelah Cemetery. More than 2,000 mourners in attendance witnessed his burial. The crest of the Society of American Magicians was inscribed on his tombstone, and a broken wand ceremony was conducted. The ritual is performed at the funeral of a magician, and a wand is broken, signifying that with the magician's demise, the wand has lost its magic. The Society of American Magicians continues to hold an annual broken wand ceremony at Houdini's grave to this very day. Houdini's tragic and unexpected death on Halloween and his promise to communicate from beyond the grave, even though he was a skeptic in life, raised a lot of eyebrows. It didn't take long for hundreds of mediums to emerge, each pronouncing that they had received messages from the late magician. Furthermore, the following year, Bess organized a seance on Halloween night in an attempt to bring forth his spirit. It is a tradition that has continued into the present, with a seance being held somewhere in the world every Halloween to try and communicate with Houdini's ghost, most notably in recent years in Halifax, at the Magic Castle in Hollywood, and at locations in New York, one of Houdini's homes. The contradictory nature of Houdini's discourse about spiritualism, coupled with his seemingly magical powers and the fact that he died on Halloween, has given rise to many, many theories about his ghost. While many skeptics don't believe he ever became a ghost, others think he returned to haunt various locations around North America in a paranormal afterlife. The first theory places Houdini's ghost in Los Angeles. Ghost hunters Richard and Debbie Sennett believe Houdini's ghost haunts an old stone staircase at a ruined estate on Laurel Canyon Boulevard in Hollywood. Known as the Houdini Estate, the mansion at 2400 Laurel Canyon Boulevard burned down in 1959. When Los Angeles' three big daily papers ran stories about the old Houdini mansion burning, visitors to the grounds began to report spotting Houdini's ghost. They described phantom light orbs that could be seen darting through the trees on the hill behind the old mansion's foundations. Houdini had lived in Laurel Canyon in 1919 while making films for Lasky Famous Players, and was known to swim in the spring-fed pool at the luxurious estate. Houdini had said that Hollywood was his favorite place, and the 9 months that he stayed there may have been the happiest time of his life. Could his ghost have returned there, perhaps to reminisce about happier days? The second theory places Houdini's ghost in Niagara Falls, Canada. In the book Shadows of Niagara, John Savoy explains that in 1968, atop Clifton Hill, the Houdini Magical Hall of Fame opened its doors featuring professional paraphernalia of the famous magician and escape artist. The large amount of treasures were bequeathed to Houdini's brother, known in the profession as Hardin. Houdini had instructed Hardin to burn the material so that no one would discover his secrets, but Hardin did not want to destroy the items. Instead, he kept them in storage for nearly 40 years. Eventually, the hoard of items Houdini used during magic shows were sold to the Houdini Magical Hall of Fame in Niagara Falls and put on display. According to Savoy, in the first year of the museum's operation, there were a series of 6 fires, a robbery, and a freak accident in which one of the museum's directors walked through a plate glass window. It appeared as if Houdini himself was showing his displeasure of the museum. Savoy also mentions the numerous seances that were held each year to see if the spirit of Houdini would return. Each time the seances were less effective than previous years, and finally in 1974, medium Anne Fisher persuaded Houdini to make himself known and that this would be the last seance if he did not. Instantly, a pot of flowers fell to the ground and a book about Houdini followed. It opened to a page which featured a Houdini poster with the title, "Do Spirits Return?" In 1995, Houdini's ghost was blamed for a massive fire that ripped through the building. Most of the artifacts were destroyed in the blaze, essentially fulfilling Houdini's final wishes. This building now houses a 3D movie theater, and according to staff members, paranormal activities still unfold there, including disembodied voices that spook caretakers at night. Could Houdini's ghost haunt Niagara Falls, perhaps in anger that his last wishes were not respected? The third theory suggests Houdini's spirit remained in Detroit after his death. Some people believe his ghost haunts the David Stott building located on the same site of the Garrick Theatre, which was demolished in 1928. Other rumors place his ghost at the building that once housed W.M.R. Hamilton's funeral home where Houdini was embalmed. Still, others feel it is more realistic that he haunts the site of the old Grace Central Hospital, which today hosts the Harper Professional Building. The hospital was, after all, the only place that Houdini was unable to escape from. Could Houdini's ghost have returned to the site of his tragic death? A fourth theory places Houdini's ghost in Greenwich Village, New York. In the book Haunted Greenwich Village, author Tom Ogden speculates that Houdini haunts McSorley's old ale house in chapter 20, entitled Escape from Beyond. Founded by an Irish immigrant who had escaped the famine, the tavern would go on to welcome some of America's most famous people, including Abraham Lincoln, Teddy Roosevelt, E.E. Cummings, Brendan Behan, Woody Guthrie, and John Lennon. Houdini liked to frequent the establishment when in New York when between tours, and Ogden believes his ghost haunts the watering hole to this very day. The evidence? A pair of manacles that are rumored to belong to Houdini are shackled to a gleaming bar rail. The theory suggests that Houdini's ghost returns to his old watering hole in the form of a black phantom cat, sitting in the window before suddenly disappearing. Could Houdini's ghost have returned to his favorite pub? The final theory places Houdini's ghost in Montreal, the city where he met his fate. Montreal's old Princess Theatre, where Houdini received the punch that ultimately killed him, is located at 476 St. Catherine Street West, in a building that is presently abandoned. The Princess Theatre was built in 1908 for vaudeville and burlesque shows, operettas, and theatrical performances. In 1915, it was completely destroyed by fire, but was rebuilt 2 years later with a terracotta facade. It was in the second incarnation of the building that Houdini met his fate. In 1963, the Princess was renamed La Parisienne and underwent major renovations. In 1974, the theater closed for more renovations and was later reopened as a 5-screen cinema. Le Parisien hosted the first Montreal World Film Festival in 1977, one of Canada's oldest film events. During its days as a cinema, there were wild rumors that Houdini was haunting the building. Staff members reported seeing his ghost on no less than 3 occasions, wearing a top hat and a cape. In 2002, a fire destroyed one auditorium and damaged 6 others. Finally, the cinema closed its doors for good on April 12, 2007, after serving as a low-cost cinema showing French-language movies. Could Houdini's ghost have returned to the site which spurred on his untimely death? Today the building is for rent, but with persistent rumors that Houdini's ghost haunts the place, finding a tenant might be difficult. There can be no denying that Houdini still inspires artists and magicians to this very day. In popular culture, the stories of Harry Houdini's spirit also continue to influence creatives. In 2011, a Canadian band called Punch Drunk Cabaret wrote a song called The Ghost of Harry Houdini. Meanwhile, in 2018, Montreal's McCord Museum launched an exhibition featuring some of Houdini's posters. It was entitled Illusions, the Art of Magic, and I was lucky enough to catch it. It was really amazing. While ultimately it is still unknown if Houdini returned as a ghost, there are certainly a lot of theories about which city he haunts. Given that he was considered the greatest magician to ever live, perhaps he continues to appear and disappear at various locations throughout North America in a paranormal afterlife. If he is indeed a ghost, the odds seem pretty good that he haunts Montreal, if only for the reason that it was here he met his fate, the unexpected and fatal blows from a McGill student that led to his ultimate demise. Hello. So today I've invited Dean Gunnerson to come have a little chat with me about Houdini. Dean is an escape artist and magician who's appeared on TV in over 165 countries performing his escapes. He's won a Merlin Award along with the title World's Best Escape Artist, a Silver Cuffs Award of Lifetime Achievement for his many extreme escapes over nearly 3 decades of performing, has made a Ripley's record as World's Most Daring Escape Artist, 2 Guinness World Records for escaping on the TV show Spectacular World of Guinness, and was the first recipient and only escape artist to ever win the Houdini Award presented on the Magic Stars television show in Tokyo. He has also been honored for his work as a humanitarian. His major stunts include Buried Alive, Cement Tomb Escape, The Challenge at Hoover Dam, Gator Bait, Airplane Jump, The Car Crusher Escape, Houdini's Milk Can Escape, Houdini's Chinese Water Torture Cell, and many more. On top of this, when I was a kid living in Winnipeg, Manitoba, he still somehow found the time to come and perform magic tricks at my 5th birthday party, which is something that I will never forget. It's safe to say that Dean Gunnerson is our Houdini of today, which makes him a great guest to chat with for this video. So how are you doing today, Dean?
Hey, great. After all that, it's hard to believe I'm still alive and ticking. So thank you for having me on your show, and happy Halloween.
Yes, happy Halloween. I'm so happy that you're able to join me for this chat about Houdini. And I know that you're really busy right now, so I appreciate the time.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Again, I love talking about Houdini, and Halloween is my absolute favorite time of the year. It's my Christmas, so to speak.
Oh yeah, me too, absolutely. So to touch on your professional background, I'll always remember your origin story, so to speak. You survived juvenile leukemia, which playwright Carolyn Gray dubs as your first escape. Mm-hmm. From there, you began mirroring the training of your hero, Houdini. And can you tell us a bit about your discovery of Houdini and how he impacted you in those early years?
Yeah, well, Houdini played a very significant part in my career and in my life. When I was 10 years old, my mom bought me my very first book on Houdini, and I kind of read it and got a feel of Houdini. It's in my morgue here in a special spot. I hang on to everything, but it gave me a feel of this man that could travel around the world and get out of impossible situations. He could get out of straitjackets that nobody could. He could get out of police handcuffs. He could break out of jail cells. He could hang by his ankles, high in the air, getting out of straitjackets and things. He would jump off bridges, chained and handcuffed, and escape. Locked in boxes, nailed on. And as a kid, that was like a comic book superhero. But yet he was a real person. He could really do these things. And I thought, wow, that would be really cool. Just like, some kids wanted to play hockey or football or whatever. This is what I wanted to do. And so it just kind of stuck there as a young kid. But yeah, when I was 12 years old, I was diagnosed with leukemia and given a low percentage chance of survival. And, it's kind of used as a guinea pig a little bit, testing out different chemotherapy treatments. And I had radiation and I survived. But I was no longer able to play sports as I could because it made some of my bones brittle, and my doctors wouldn't let me do that. So for me, rather than being this bald kid that had lost all his hair from radiation, I started working on my magic tricks at the time and some escapes, so that I had something else to be special about. I wasn't this sick kid that was, gonna die of cancer. And so it gave me another outlet, another creative outlet to flow my energy and my enthusiasm, which I had a lot as a kid. And so that kind of shaped it. And then through junior high and high school, I used to, do things at school and escapes and shows, or when the police would come to school, my friends would get them to lock me up in their handcuffs, and then I'd escape, and it just kept building and building, and helped pay my way to university. And it was never easy. It was always a struggle, and trying as a struggling artist, trying to make ends meet, and help to fill my passion of trying to buy old handcuffs and locks or Houdini books, and but it worked really hard. I did my first big publicity escape on Halloween of 1982 from the old Winnipeg Free Press building where Houdini had escaped from back in 1923. And I broke Houdini's record. I don't know if you were there for that. You would have been really, really young.
I was born in '89, but I think I
So,
remember hearing about it from my parents.
yeah. That I think probably thoughts didn't transfer, but yeah, that was a big moment.
Mm,
Um, and of course, Houdini passed away on Halloween back in 1926. So that was my first big Houdini tribute,
okay.
and it really launched my career.
My next question, since you had mentioned paying homage to Houdini in your escapes, his most famous act was the Chinese water torture cell. And I remember
Yeah.
watching you perform this escape and just being terrified for you the entire time because you're upside down in like a large aquarium essentially. And I think that would
Yeah.
be one of my nightmares. So what was that like, and how did it feel to successfully execute this iconic escape?
Well, it was the Chinese water torture cell was probably one of Houdini's most difficult and dangerous escapes. It was also featured in the 1953 movie with Tony Curtis, who played Houdini. And I had the pleasure of working with Tony Curtis many years ago on a TV show that we were doing in Tokyo. And he talked to me about playing Houdini and performing the water torture cell. And it's a very difficult, challenging escape. Like you said, it's like a big aquarium or phone booth, and it's filled with water. You get locked up in your ankles, and then you get raised high above the stage, swung over, and then lowered upside down and locked into this giant tank of water. Actually, I have one right over my shoulder there,
Oh, yeah.
uh, and that one actually belonged to Doug Henning, another very famous magician and a former Winnipegger,
Okay.
and he used this Houdini water torture cell in his very first TV special in 1975. It closed the show and helped launch his TV career. And after he performed it, he said he would never do it again because it was so difficult, dangerous, too stressful on him, and too stressful on his audience. So years later, I was able to acquire it, and I would perform it on very rare occasions in Las Vegas or Italy or Canada or Tokyo and things. But it wasn't my favorite escape because of the challenges. And like you said, it's called the water torture cell for a very good reason. It is torture going in the water upside down
Yeah.
and being confined and not being able to reach your ankles or not be able to breathe and water going up in your nose. It would be a horrible way to die.
We are a haunted channel, so I
Mm-hmm.
want to get into a little bit of the spooky stuff about spiritualism. This was a major topic in Victorian subculture, and despite
Mm-hmm.
being the world's most famous magician, Houdini was not a believer, though he wanted to be. His search actually soured his relationship with Arthur Conan Doyle when he started exposing mediums, which I'm sure you know all about.
Mm-hmm.
In 2007, you were involved in a play by aforementioned playwright Carolyn Gray called The Elmwood Visitation, which explored a time in 1923 when Arthur Conan Doyle traveled to Winnipeg to join the city's famous Hamilton Circle. I was lucky to see this play, and it's probably one of the things that stuck in my subconscious to inspire me to this day in my paranormal projects. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on spiritualism where Houdini is concerned, and also find out about your own views on the paranormal.
Well, I'm glad you got to see the play, the Elmwood Visitation, because it was a really neat project. It was a really neat play, and part of it was based on fact and events that happened in Winnipeg with the Hamilton House, which wasn't too far from where I grew up as a kid. Um, but Houdini was a crusader against spiritualism. You're right. He did want to believe. His mother passed away, and he was really, really close to his mom. And he wanted to talk to her. He wanted to connect to her. So he started going to see mediums and spiritualists. after she passed away. And it was around the time just after the First World War, where mothers across North America, around the world, had lost their sons fighting in the so-called Great War, and they wanted to reach out to their moms, and it became a business. It became a big business of the time. So Houdini would go to these mediums and ask for communication to his mother. And what he found out, he would see objects floating around the room, tables levitating, ghosts appear, ectoplasm coming, spiritual writings. But what he really noticed was that they weren't really being done in communication with the dead, that they were using magic tricks, that variations of things that magicians have done and were doing. And this really discouraged him because he really wanted to make contact. But it discouraged him, but it also made him angry because these people weren't being truthful. They weren't being honest. When you go see a magician, magicians are one of the most honest people in the world, because when you go see a magician, their magic is in the art that they produce. It has a rational explanation. It's not truly miracles, but they do it in such a way that you're left wondering how it's done, but knowing that it's not done in a mystical way, even though it can be presented that way as part of their nature. And so Houdini got really angry at these spiritualists and started exposing them and their tricks, how they were making tables levitate, how they were making ghosts appear. And he went all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States and Congress, and exposing this and trying to get laws to protect people from the fake spiritualists. And they hated them because they were affecting their business, and they were making lots and lots of money deceiving people. So Houdini really tried hard to find the truth. I think there are things in life that we don't understand. The human mind is an amazing organ. We can, read books, and the words can translate these visions and these lands and these peoples and characters in a way that they become very real. As an author and a writer, that's what you try and do every time you write something, is you try and make it real. You try and make the people reading it, understand, relate, feel that these people are really there in their mind. So, does the spirit world come back and create the same thing in our mind? I think people that have had those experiences really feel that and believe that, much like a good book or a novel. So, I believe we can have these feelings or these emotions or these connections. But I've never seen a physical ghost appear. I've had things that I haven't been able to explain, but I've never had the experience of like a Casper or a person that's not here sit next to me and be able to talk to or communicate.
I think I'm at a similar point with you, because I've known people who will say flat out, paranormal stuff doesn't exist. But there's still so much in the world that's unexplained, right? And I think that when people say, oh, do you believe in ghosts? And especially since I do all this haunted stuff, I say I believe in something. I believe in something we haven't explained yet. So I think that there are very real experiences out there, and I wouldn't discount any of it. But I just think we don't have an explanation yet. And I think it would be very interesting if we could, for sure communicate with people who have left us at some point.
I remember the first time I went to Houdini's gravesite in New York, and I had to rent a car and a driver, and he took me there, and a massive cemetery similar to what you have in Montreal. I thought, how am I going to find Houdini? And as we pulled up to the Jewish part of it, there was Houdini right front and center in this massive monument, and it was closed. And I go, it's closed. How can it be closed? It's Saturday. And my manager goes, well, Houdini was Jewish, wasn't he? I go, yeah. Well, it'd be closed on the Sabbath. And it was like, oh, no. So I had to open the locks of the cemetery to sneak in to go visit Houdini because I was leaving the next day, so I couldn't come back. So I had a very spiritual presence going into Houdini's gravesite to visit him, and looking over my shoulder and wonder what ill deed was going to happen, breaking into a cemetery and meeting him for the first time in his resting spot. It was a spiritual experience that I'll always remember.
It's somehow more appropriate though than just walking in. It's like I feel like you should have to, escape or do something, like it makes sense that it would happen that way somehow. Yeah. Speaking of ghosts, my host, Dr. Mab, who does videos in French, he could not be here today, unfortunately, because of scheduling, but he did send a question along, and I have one more after this, but I think the timing is good for this one. He wanted to know, what would you say to Houdini's ghost if you met him?
Wow, man, there's so many questions I have, because I've read and studied him for my entire adult life and my teenage life. So, I mean, it would be a long list. I think he would probably get tired of it and want to go back to the other side and back beyond. But I'd like to know more about, well, his great escapes, but more about his personal struggles. How he dealt with becoming the most successful vaudeville entertainer in the history of vaudeville, and that the pressure that put on him, and how he coped with that, and how he managed to keep going. Anybody can be good once, right? The one-hit wonders, but to be good for such a long time, right? That really says something about Houdini and Houdini's career. And you think about it, Houdini's been dead for almost 100 years. But yet we're still talking about him. Yeah. We still remember him. How many entertainers do we really remember like this, right? So what was Houdini's secret? What was his real secret? Because when Houdini died, he gave all his props to his brother.
Yeah.
And in Houdini's will, he said, after his brother dies, all his props would be destroyed. He wanted all his secrets to go into the afterlife. He didn't want anybody to ever know them. Mm-hmm. But his brother kind of came a little bit more on harder times, and he sold off or gave away all Houdini stuff. So that wish was never fulfilled. And in Niagara Falls, a lot of Houdini's props were on display there at the Houdini Magical Hall of Fame. And in 1995, the Houdini Museum mysteriously and mystically caught fire and burned down. And Houdini's most prized possession, his water torture cell, burned in that fire. They're not quite sure how the fire started, but was that a sign from Houdini coming back to say, look, I don't want my props to be exposed anymore. I don't want them being seen by the public. This is my wish. So maybe I would ask Houdini if he came back and lit that fire.
That might have been the grand paranormal gesture you were talking about.
Maybe Houdini was no small timer. He didn't do things in a small way. He did them in a great and spectacular way. In fact, even in the last so-called official seance in 1936, if you listen to it, Houdini didn't come back to ring bells or make tables float or speak in tongues or some far-off voice. But after the seance, there was a thunderstorm. Rain came down on the top of the Knickerbocker Hotel where the seance was being held. Rain that hadn't rained in many months before that. It was a kind of a drought condition. and it rained for a few minutes and then stopped. So
Oh.
in the recording, it talks about, well, would Houdini come back in such a minor way to ring a bell or to open a pair of handcuffs? He would come back in a magnificent way from the heavens and rain upon his tears upon everybody else.
So this episode of Spooky Stories is going to be on YouTube October 29th as our Halloween special. And as you've mentioned a couple times, Houdini's tragic death happened on Halloween in 1926 and was unfortunately set in motion by a Montreal student, making this a topic of particular interest for us to cover here and at this time of year. So in the 96 years since his passing, tell us a bit about finally how you and those in your industry pay homage to the late great artist these days.
Yeah. Well, again, every Halloween they do a seances in various places to try and keep Houdini's memory alive. If anybody can escape from the dead, it would be Houdini. So again, this year there will be Houdini seances going on. I've been involved in several over the years. I don't know if significant things have happened to make me believe it was really Houdini, but some strange things have happened that, you know, make you scratch your head or wonder if that's really there. You know, I myself have died on Halloween. You know, in doing another tribute to Houdini in 1983, I got locked into a wooden coffin and thrown into the icy Red River in Winnipeg.
I remember that.
Rather than becoming an escape from a wooden coffin, which I have in the back corner over there somewhere, that's the actual coffin that I died in. It became an escape from death. And I remember being locked underwater for like 4 minutes, no breathing, you know, they pulled me out. I was blue unconscious and dead. And I got to see the lights at the end of the tunnel and everything that people talk about. It was very peaceful. It wasn't scary. I wasn't afraid. But somewhere in here, I knew I wasn't going to die. And I got sent back and came back to life. So every Halloween is important for me to do something special for Houdini. I'm just getting ready to do a death-defying escape in the next couple of days. So hopefully I'll be around on Halloween to
I hope
watch
so.
the broadcast and do something special with Houdini this year.
Yeah.
Because like I said, it's an important part of my life and many others. So it'll be maybe this is the year Houdini comes back. I mean, we don't know.
Maybe I'll do my own Houdini seance here in Montreal on Halloween.
Yeah. Oh, that would be great. Yeah, I mean, if you could do it even by the Princess Theater. I think it's like a store.
Yeah, it's a fairly modern storefront. It was kind of hard for me to find when I was going to take pictures. So you don't have the character anymore, but that location exists.
Yeah. I wonder if they would let you into the basement, into the old dressing room. Because Houdini, you know, you think he used to walk the doors and the alleyways. I've been there once before when I was in Montreal. And the back alley, the back way is still the old entrance as it was when Houdini was there. Okay. So maybe it's something on the back steps or like I said, if they would allow you to take a tour in the basement and see if you get any feelings or any vibrations, or ask Houdini to come say hello.
Yeah, I'll have to take a look into it for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I would love to do that myself. But if anything happens, let me know. I could send you some of Houdini's own handcuffs or something to participate in that.
That would be amazing. I mean, every video I put out, I put chapter 1 on the title to sort of leave it open to future investigations and stuff. So that's I would love to do a part 2 and investigate a little bit more, do our own seance and stuff. I think that would be very fascinating.
Yeah. Well, if you or anybody does see Houdini, tell him I said hi, and I'm greatly appreciated for the footsteps that he left me to follow. They've been big footprints, but but and it's always hard to escape Houdini's shadow. But it's been an honor and a privilege walking in that shadow and doing Houdini's great escapes, and then creating my own escapes that not even Houdini, the great Houdini, ever attempted. But I love talking about Houdini, and I love sharing what I know about Houdini. And someday we'll meet for sure. I know that.
I think you've done an awfully good job of following in his footsteps.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Before you go, tell us a bit about what you're working on, what you can actually tell us about it, and also let us know where subscribers can find you online if they'd like to follow your adventures.
Yeah, well, I'm on Facebook. I have like a personal Facebook, and then I have World's Greatest Escape Artist, Dean Gunnerson, on Facebook. I do have like Twitter and Instagram and stuff. I'm not quite as big into that aspects, but it's there. But there's lots of videos on YouTube of me being chained up in the coffin and dying, and then putting me out, or footage of me hanging by my toes from a trapeze, getting out of a straitjacket over Hoover Dam, escaping, and chained and thrown out of an airplane, and those kind of things. There's lots of that stuff on YouTube if people wanted to go and watch. I do have a big escape coming up really shortly that I hope to still be around for Halloween. That I'll send you an air date on that as soon as I hear. Perfect. And I'm always working on things. I'm the book that Carolyn Gray wrote called Dean Gunnerson, The Making of an Escape Artist, which talks about some of my early escapes and how I got into it, and with my friend Philip, and us breaking out of jail cells and things. We're working on having that put into a movie.
Oh, great.
We just got funding to do kind of a pilot project for that. So that's really exciting. And I'm always working on more shows. I do a lot of corporate stuff, and hoping that COVID escapes this planet soon, and I can get back to China and touring more around the world.
I agree with you there.
Yeah. So. And then my webpage is alwaysescaping.com.
Yes. And I'll also link everything in the description down below, as I always do, so people can take a look. So thank you so much for joining me today, Dean. It's been great to see you. And I really, really appreciate you being a part of Haunted Montreal's spooky story sessions.
Oh, it's been my honor. A great way to spend Halloween. And if you or any of your guests are ever in Manitoba or near Righty Mountain where I live, if they mention your show, that they saw your broadcast, I'd be more than happy to give them a private tour of the morgue and all the magical things that I have here.
Excellent. It's a great offer. Highly recommend taking him up on that. Okay, I guess we will wrap it up, and I'll hopefully talk to you again soon.
Great. All right. Always remember, nothing is impossible if you truly believe.
Are you a Montreal resident or a traveler who has experienced something in relation to Houdini's ghost, whether here or anywhere else around North America? If so, we would love to hear your thoughts. As always, we're extremely interested to know your opinions on what is going on. Thank you for stopping by. If this is your first video, we hope you'll stick around for the next. We put out new stories in both French and English every Saturday. If you'd like to learn more about the organization founded by the talented Donovan King, it's all listed in the description down below, along with links to purchase tickets to in-person haunted storytelling tours. Remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. We'll have a new video out for you next Saturday, but until then, happy Halloween and stay spooky.